Hello and welcome to our panel for event venues on planning and succeeding in a COVID world. I'm delighted to have today three of our judges from the London Venue Awards. Greg Lawson, who's the CEO of Smart Group, Diane Waldron, who's the Sales and Marketing Director of the QEII Centre and also the Chair of ICCA for UK and Ireland, and Steve Sayer, who's the Vice President and General Manager of the O2 at AEG Europe. It would be great just to hear just a couple of minutes from each of you on how the last year has been, what you've done with your venue, what your experiences have been. Steve, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, hi Claire. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? It's sort of 15, 16 months. The arena has been closed for all of that time. We've been fortunate that, parts of the venue overall have been open when they can be open. So the Entertainment District and Icon, our outlet retail scheme up at the O2, of course. But yeah, the arena's been closed now for 15 months, 16 months. So yeah, I mean, during that time, we've had to think about the business. We've had to think about how we manage our way through this. We had to do a little bit of restructuring in July of last year, when we started to kind of get a sense this was going to go on longer than perhaps people felt it would at first. Although at that stage, we were still planning to be open sort of back end of the year or early part of 2021, which of course we're not. So, fingers crossed we get a result. All of the sort of media briefings over the last couple of days do seem to be positive. But we've used the time as best we can. We've been working closely with government all the way through, trying to influence the guidelines, and we've been working as part of the early stages of the ERP. The Brits took place a few weeks ago now, a couple of months ago. Which was one of the pilot events where we were able to test a number of the kind of processing protocols. We gave the venue over to the NHS last summer, early part of last summer, which we were delighted to do, of course. That was a training facility for Nightingale in the early days. And we've tried to be creative. We've tried to utilise the venue, but it's such a big venue that, it's hard in a way to, activate it, when we're not operating, in our usual way. But we did do some really successful backstage tours last summer. We opened up backstage for the first time, and we had a massive streaming event with Pete Tong, sort of pre-Christmas, as we always do. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but we're hopefully ready for the restart.
Yeah, absolutely. Diane, what about you?
So obviously echo everything that Steve has said. We had a real baptism of fire at the beginning, because actually, if you can remember all the way back to last March, QE2 was splashed all over the front of the papers because we had a delegate attend who had been in contact with one of those initial 9 people that had COVID. And it's sort of horror comes to Westminster was the headline. And now, obviously, in the context of everything that's happened since, that was obviously such a tiny little thing. But we learned a lot through that experience, and worked closely with Public Health England on that. So we've had to adapt, obviously, like everybody. We've had to put all COVID COVID secure measures into the venue so that we're ready to restart. We've been a test centre for lateral flow testing for government officials during this time. We've also done quite a lot of filming as well. And ordinarily, we wouldn't have any availability to hand over to a filming company, but obviously we had a fairly empty venue, so that's been a different income stream for us, and it's been quite interesting. We've been quite fortunate as well that we've been able to redeploy some of our people into other government departments, so we haven't had to do the restructuring that some businesses have got. But now we're bringing our certainly all the sales team are back now, and we're looking forward to the future.
Good. Greg?
Well, echoing again, both of those experiences. Yeah, I mean, a living nightmare, and I think I was quite slow to understand how dangerous COVID was. In actual fact, I got COVID in March 2020. I wasn't very ill from it, fortunately. but it was because I just didn't personally move quickly enough. As far as the business was concerned, though, I realised then how important it was, what a big thing, and the fact that it would change things for some period of time. We moved very quickly in the fact that outside of Evolution being our main business, we also do have 2 catering companies, event management companies, and other businesses. And so we made an enormous amount of people redundant with immediacy because I just couldn't see how we could cover the salary bill with everything else going on. Of course, I'd never heard of the word furlough, didn't believe that could possibly happen, and thought that there was more money than there existed in the world, and it could never be so. So the venue was closed and has been closed for 15 months. During that period of time, we nearly opened up as a testing centre. We nearly opened up as a vaccination centre. Neither of those things came to pass. We set up a charity and produced 75,000 meals for hospitals, which at least made us feel like we were doing something with our lives. We have carried on with a core of staff in the office, sometimes down to 2 or even 1. And a lot of people furloughed. All of the people that we made redundant, of course, we brought back on furlough as we were entitled to do so. We've then gone through an awful period of time of cancelling events, making sure that we return deposits to people, because of course it's frustration, and therefore we must, and that was into the millions of pounds, and again very scary from a cash flow point of view. Then of course we've rebooked events and recancelled events, and that has gone on several times. I thought, like I think Steve, you said, that sort of September, October would see the end of it, and then realised when the furlough was extended, I think in October through to April, that we really were in for the long run. And so we've then tried to make sure that we could retain as much in the way of talent within the businesses as we could, pay our bills as of course we must, negotiate with as many people as we could, and then start to look to rebuild. And like everybody else, I'm sure, I've had to back myself in saying, when do I now think things will happen, and look to September as really being the time that things will properly take off. But Claire and I were talking earlier, we were very lucky to be able to hold an awards dinner for 700 people on Tuesday night, which was just wonderful. Can't tell you how good it was, and see all those people that I haven't seen for 15 and 18 months, and to work together once again. It was COVID safe. It was sad that they couldn't have a drink when they arrived. It was sad they couldn't network afterwards, and they couldn't dance, and that's a very key part to us and to Steve. I know you as well, I'm sure, and Diane too. But it was a wonderful event, and we've got several events coming up. We also did an exhibition and conference last week for 2 days for I think 1,400 people over the period of time, which was great. We've got a very big government event towards the end of July as well, in which there are a lot of people attending from all over the world. So I'm hopeful that things are going to return, but I have to say it has been a living nightmare.
But it was honestly wonderful to see that picture of your awards evening. It just it made me really happy to see something actually going on and taking place. I mean, that's what I'm interested in really talking about now, is looking forward. Assuming that government regulations are going to be lifted on the 19th of July, how does everyone feel about the events going forward? I think between the 3 of you, you cover music events, Christmas parties, business conferences, exhibitions. What's the sentiment, Diane? And also I'm very interested because you cover the association sector, which, obviously looking longer ahead, how confident are people?
Well, I think, on the positive side of things, the long term for the association sector is very healthy in sort of like 23, 24 onwards. And certainly that, there have been some big wins over this time for those future years for congresses to come to London and the UK. So, the longer term picture is definitely a positive one. In the more short term, though, I think, still there, people, I think everyone, we're all talking about pent up demand. And, we can see just from the conversation we just had just now that everyone's very keen to get back to face, but I think decisions that you can make for yourself personally, whether you go to a concert or whether you go to the pub or whatever, when businesses are making those decisions for their employees, whether they attend or or the financial risk of going ahead with a conference when they don't know how many attendees they're going to get. There's still cautious optimism, but getting people to get over the line and sign contracts is, it's an uphill struggle at the moment. I really think it's a waiting game. We've been so close to the line before. We were going to reopen in October last year, then and other dates. So is it going to happen this time? I think that's what people are waiting for. You're right, Claire, that all the signs are promising that the government intend to reopen on the 19th of July, and then hopefully that will give the boost for those events that are still holding later in the year to go ahead. And I think it's almost, obviously some people really want to be first and go ahead, but a lot of corporates don't want to be the first to do it. They want to follow on behind others. So it is just going to be getting those first events away and then rebuilding momentum to encourage others to follow.
You mentioned that you had an event planned which had an international audience. Yeah,
so I mean, obviously quite a lot of our business has international delegates coming to it, and that's a difficulty at the moment. So for an example, we have an event in September that is supposed to be originally it was supposed to be 800 people, delegates flying in from all over the world. Then they still want to go ahead, but then it's 200 people. But these delegates, as I say, are coming in from a lot of amber list countries. Some red list countries would want to be attending, and it just keeps shrinking and shrinking. And now they're looking at potentially doing a hybrid event just with 30 people coming in from amber list countries. But one of the frustrations is that there doesn't appear to be any exemption from quarantine for those sorts of business travelers, whereas obviously for to get too political here, but government events, G7, COP26, UEFA, there are exemptions for those. So I think, that's been for all of us across all the months we've gone through, the inconsistencies of approach has been something that's very difficult. And, I think our clients expect us to have a crystal ball and they say, well, what's the situation going to be like in October? I have no idea. But everyone wants that reassurance, and it's really been very, very hard to give to people. But, for us, it's really, we've just tried so hard to work in partnership with our clients over the past and moving forwards as well. So whether that's sharing risk or, just trying to adapt to make things work for them, because it's in everybody's interest that the industry gets going again, and that people can really see the value of face-to-face events, what you can do at face-to-face events, all those serendipitous moments that happen at those that just don't happen through a screen.
I think we can all concur on that. Steve, what about your thoughts for the rest of this year and looking ahead to the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the consumer confidence point that Diane's made is, or the confidence point is an important one. But in our sector, sort of thinking about, concerts or comedy events or, live sporting events, there's huge pent-up demand. We know that from the refund rates are still incredibly low for rescheduled events. Obviously, not talking about cancelled events. You're looking at sort of 6-7% for shows at the O2. So the vast majority of fans are holding onto their tickets. And we also know from our consumer insight tracking that, there's a huge pent-up demand. Yes, it is a waiting game, and we've seen sort of different waves, through the pandemic. But, right now there's pent-up demand from fans who want to get back out, and there's pent-up demand from the bands who want to get back out. So, I think if we get, the sort of kind of green light on July the 19th, then sort of all systems go. We'll have a really busy Q4. I think there'll be a little bit of a lag, just the lead time for booking events at the O2, you know, that there are some short lead opportunities for us, but I think from Q4 onwards, September perhaps as well, I expect it to get busier and busier. The diary in 22 is probably as busy as it's been since we opened 14 years ago. And you know, the sort of long term or the sort of forecast into 2023 also looks incredibly busy. So I think for the sort of live entertainment side of the event industry, you know, there's going to be 2 really bumpy years now. You know, that is all things being equal, and you know, no 4th waves or 5th waves or whatever it might be. So yeah, we feel really optimistic about it, and you know, you've seen, you know, a lot of the festivals that went on sale a few months ago, you know, sold out in minutes. There's huge demand, you know, out there, and you know, we're looking forward to opening our doors and, you know, giving the fans and the bands an amazing time, because that's what we do.
We are social people and definitely want to meet, don't we? Greg, what about the Christmas party season? I'm interested in how you think that's going to go.
Sure. I think Christmas parties, it's a way off, and you know, we're big in Christmas parties. It's a very important strand of the business. What we're finding at this moment in time is exclusive bookings, i.e. one party booker for very large events that might be 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 people, and also smaller exclusives that might be 200 or 300 people. They are probably at 70%, 75% of what we did. Of what we would expect to have been having booked at this moment in the year. But mixed party, i.e. joiner party bookings, are way behind, probably 70–80% behind. And I can only attribute that to the fact that larger companies have HR departments, communications departments, and they're very keen to engage with staff again. And there are only so many venues that can do larger numbers. So some of those pieces of business are in place. But for smaller companies who might have a lot of staff furloughed, it's very difficult to even speak to the company, never mind you know, get any sort of decision. And I think that will be the case until July the 19th, if that indeed is the date, and hopefully things will move forward. In general business though, September and October in Evolution are actually over doubly booked than the sort of business that we did in 2019. In fact, it's really quite congested. That, however, is of course partly to do with pieces of business that have been delayed and cancelled and moved. And now September and October is the first time that they believe they'll be able to go ahead. Whether they will, well, we'll see, because as we all know now, it's not only virtual events, it's virtual deposits, it's virtual contracts, because they don't mean anything, because of course it's frustration. We would need to return the money and cancel the event if the government or the WHO said that we needed to. I'm also a little bit concerned about numbers and the fact that these are large-scale events, some of them 1,000, 1,500 people, but how many people will actually turn up to the events, how confident actual guests will be, never mind the organiser, I think you know, remains to be seen. And more broadly than that, we're one of the caterers for the Grand Prix, and we've got 1,600 people booked today. That's a test event. It's a ballsy one, there's no doubt on that. In the fact there's 140,000 people there a day, and over half of our staff will be camping, which does concern me a little bit as well. But that's happening. Lords, we're a caterer there. That's going forward. Hampton Court Music Festival and Henley Music Festival, both are booked and wishing to go ahead. Concourse of Elegance. So there's all sorts of things that are definitely, or appear to definitely be happening. I agree that I think there's a huge pent-up demand for events. And Steve, I'm sure from a concert point of view and comedy club, people will not be able to wait to re-attend. And of course, it's younger people and people that are less worried about COVID. Going forward further from that, it's so difficult to say. Our regular events, our exhibitions, our dinners, our awards dinners, or charity dinners are all rebooking for October, November, January, February, March, and I believe that you know, that the demand is still there. But a lot of our bookings come in, you know, really with quite short times, so it's difficult to see. But I'm an optimist. I haven't been all the time over the last year. I've had to back myself, as I said, to make sure that we are ready to do business. I might sound like a turkey voting for Christmas, but I personally didn't think that the 21st of June should go ahead. I thought it was far better to be more prudent, whether it was July the 19th or in actual fact, even if it was August the 19th, only from the point of view that none of us can afford to do this again. None of us can afford to close down again. I would rather take a little short-term pain now and then be properly opened.
I mean, it's a big question of risk, isn't it, for everybody involved? And Diane, I know when we spoke previously, we spoke about the fact that if legal restrictions are lifted on the 19th of July and events can go ahead, there is a risk, and who is taking on that risk? Is it the event organisers? Is it the venue? Is the local authority going to get involved in a way that it hasn't done before? I think it's kind of quite a murky area, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously local authorities, as you just said, have been much more in the picture than they've ever been before. And we're sort of not really sure how that's going to continue because, we know that there have been some major events cancelled very, very last minute.
It was almost this time last year, wasn't it? The boat show was cancelled.
Yeah. Yes, and obviously others have been cancelled whilst they've been in the build-up to the event as well. So I think that is obviously making event organisers naturally a little bit nervous. So that's a question mark. How, because I think also local councils, local authorities probably are naturally risk averse, and particularly those destinations that have got a lot of staycation tourism happening in them as well. They can only cope with so much at a time. So to say that's a definitely a question mark. But also where is the responsibility going to lie if the government say on the 19th of July or just before it, we remove all legal restrictions on social distancing and on mitigation such as mask wearing? Over to you. It's up to you as a venue or you as an event organizer to decide what you want to do, and I suspect that is what's going to happen. And then where does that risk lie? Does it lie with the event organizer? Does the venue carry some responsibility for that? Obviously we all want to get back to full capacity, and you want to recognize the person you're talking to. You don't want them to be behind a mask. It's so I think as venues we're all going to be keen to get back to that state of play, and it may well be particularly for a venue like us that potentially has multiple events happening in the venue at the same time. We may have different events running different models, because an event organizer may choose to continue to socially distance in their event and have delegates wear mitigation, and obviously they'd be physically completely different from other events that are taking place that might take a different approach. It's going to be we're not out of the woods yet, are we? It's there's yet more decisions to be taken and more curveballs, I think, to come at us.
From a business point of view, we're just all desperate to get back to full capacity, aren't we, because of the margin implication and the business implication. I mean, Steve, do you see yourself putting in any sort of mitigating factors? Can you imagine people wearing masks, looking towards the future for your events?
All of the feedback we've had from fans, from concert goers, is that the mitigation, well, the two that they do not want to see are masks and social distancing. Social distancing doesn't work for our business model, for the promoters. It doesn't work, frankly, for any event organizer in business or music or comedy, whatever the genre. So we've done quite a lot at the venue. We have upgraded our ventilation system. We've done a whole ventilation counter risk assessment across the venue. We've identified a couple of hotspots that we have addressed with mitigations. We partnered up with Unilever, and we have implemented the virus killer, kind of airborne virus killer technology, again in some of those kind of slightly higher risk areas that were identified. But you know, if the guidelines don't dictate that we have to implement mitigations like that, I can't envisage us doing it. I think the point Diane made about sort of the removal of the legal restrictions and, you know, pushing the responsibility, you know, onto the venue or perhaps the local authority getting more involved. You know, we've got a great relationship with the Royal Borough of Greenwich, but you know, that I think would be a concern for, you know, any event venue, that you know, we end up in this sort of kind of bureaucratic sort of mire of approvals, you know, when, you know, the event sector, you know, we know how to do this stuff. You know, risk mitigation, risk management is what we do day in, day out. And, you know, the ERP has demonstrated that, you know, the mitigations that can be put into place can work effectively. So, you know, if you know, during the winter, you know, if there was a fourth wave or a fifth wave and, you know, there was pressure on the NHS, then yeah, events can absolutely continue. Perhaps at that stage, you know, there would be a decision taken to, you know, implement sort of COVID status certification. So either vaccine, proof of vaccine or a test. But I think that has to be legislated by national government. You know, that can't be, you know, we won't be taking those decisions at a local level, I don't think, you know, because we're not, you know, fans coming to the O2 haven't indicated that that's a mitigational measure that they actively want to see. It's more the other way around. You know, when we talk to, you know, fans coming to the venue and the surveys that we've done, it's kind of, I'll put up with face masks, or I'm prepared to get tested if that's the only way I can go to an event. You know, that there isn't a body of evidence suggesting that people want to be tested prior to an event because they feel unsafe. You know, that's not how we're reading it. But of course, you know, we will work to the guidelines, whatever they may be. But you know, the crucial thing is that social distancing has to be removed, and you know that I think government are pretty clear on that. That you know, without the removal of social distancing, you know, the event sector can't get back up and running. And I think the other point to make, which I know has been sort of widely discussed in you know, in sort of kind of the lobbying kind of activity that we've all been doing, you know, it is about equivalency, you know, and you know, Diane talked about it in terms of, you know, certain groups, you know, in terms of international travel getting, you know, dispensation, but you know, you can't treat the event sector any different to high street retail or, you know, hospitality or airlines. You know, you can't have one rule for one and not for the other. So, you know, we're sort of cautiously optimistic that, you know, the guidelines are removed. You know, we know that there are mitigations that we can implement if we need to, if there is a severe health risk, you know, at some stage in the future. But yeah, I don't think we'll be doing that unilaterally unless, you know, we're mandated to do it.
Greg, your business clients, do you think they will be requesting more mitigating measures like social distancing and masks, or do you see them more like, you know, more along the lines which Steve describes with the consumer audience?
Yeah, sorry, Claire, our clients.
Yeah, you know, when you're holding business events rather than the consumer events which you run, do you think you will be requested to, you know, do testing, have masks, or do you think that they're going to be more kind of quick to get back to events and want to get rid of social distancing?
Yeah, it's going to be very different for you know, for all sorts of clients in different walks of life. The event that we just did, actually, the 700, was for the health sector, and they were, of course, very, very focused on making sure that the event was safe. We've got I know an event that may well take place in September that's for the events industry, where I know that they will definitely not want face masks or social distancing, and cannot wait to get back to it. So I'm sure it'll be horses for courses. I personally am a fan of the idea of vaccination passports and testing, because I can see how quickly it could get us back to being able to operate. But that may be an unpopular thing to say. As far as the government is concerned, or we're under the Wandsworth District Council, and I know they're very nervous, the same as all of the councils are going to be, to make sure that people are compliant. I mean, none of us knows what these government rules are going to be, but I know that they'll be watching closely, because none of these councils wants to have an outbreak. We too have upgraded our ventilation, whether it's PPE and flow training, enhanced cleaning, QR codes, you name it, of course we will do it. And as I think both Diane and Steve have said, we are event managers. We're used to risk management. This is what we do for a living. So I believe that if it is that masks and social distancing are not removed, it will really hamper us getting back to normal life. Some conferences, I think, can still take place, exhibitions can take place, and some dinners can take place. But if you are in an industry like the charities industry, or the awards market, where that's a very, very important revenue stream for them, I think it could drive numbers down so far that it could be very difficult for them to operate. So I think this does need to be a complete removal, and sure, like all of us, we'll comply with everything that's laid out, but I'm waiting to see just what it's going to be that the government say.
You, Steve and Greg, you both mentioned investing in ventilation. There's a lot of talk, obviously, with event organisers about hybrid events. I'm just wondering whether any of you have invested in the technology to deliver events both virtually as well as physically, and what your thoughts are on the hybrid events. Diane?
Well, yeah, everyone's talked about hybrid events as being sort of the saviour of events, haven't they? I mean, as a QEII centre, we've invested in studio equipment and have been running some smaller virtual events, hybrid, in that they've had a handful of people in the building. I think that, the hybrid seemed an amazing idea to start with. I think that the problem that, event organisers have is that actually effectively you've got the cost of two events. You've got the cost of the physical event and all the venue and everything, and then you've got the cost of a whole separate, the content or the technology to deliver a virtual event as well. So actually what we're finding with events is actually it's less hybrid. It's more either it's fully virtual or it's fully face-to-face. I do think there's always going to be, moving forward, a more digital aspect to events, and obviously a lot of clients have seen much greater take up through their virtual events. So whereas they might have had 800, 1,000 people physically at an event, they might have 10,000 people on the call. But the question mark there is, how much engagement have they got? Are those people fully committed to attending that event and sitting in front of their computer, or are they on another call as well and they just got it running in the background? And of course, from a sponsorship point of view, all those things that make events financially viable, the sponsors aren't really interested in, because there isn't enough interaction for them with those delegates. So yeah, I think that that even those that have been running virtual events successfully, they're still very keen to get back to doing face-to-face events. But I think perhaps they'll stream afterwards. They'll make the content available afterwards to a wider audience to make sure that they're going out to as many people as possible. So yeah, but yeah, we've invested, as I'm sure all the big venues have, I'm sure.
I mean, there's obviously the sustainability issue as well with virtual offers, and they do bring in a whole new audience, but they're just not the same. I see them as two different products, and I think, as you say, Diane, running them both at the same time is just double cost, and it's not going to be double the revenue. So, we all want to get back to running good businesses, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, Claire, I was just going to come on the back of that. I mean, that's sort of partly where I think we would go. That you know, during the lockdowns in particular, but I guess for most of the last 12 months, the only way that music fans can engage with their artists has been through streaming. And that whole business model has kind of exploded over the last 12 months. Now, it's not going to replace the power of live, that live concert or show, or live sporting event, to be in the arena or to be in the stadium, witnessing the kind of the magic that's happening on stage. You're not going to be able to beat that. But what we have seen, I think, what hybrid will bring to our sector is the ability for the artist to almost augment what they're doing in the arena. Now, it could be hybrid in the sense of, you sell out the O2 in London, and actually that show is a bespoke, unique one-off play in London, which can be broadcast or streamed around the world simultaneously. So that is certainly something that I can see happening. And when we go live with our Welcome Back shows, which is sort of programmed through back end of August until the end of the year, we're partnering up with O2 Telefonica to a really kind of amazing, diverse program of content. And we've already announced Mo Gilligan and Burna Boy and Alanis Morissette are playing our Welcome Back series. But all of those shows, we've created an opportunity with a streaming company to provide the artist with an opportunity to actually take that sort of unique play, kind of one-off event, and play it out to a different audience, who can't get a ticket to the show, or giving a fan who went to the show the opportunity to watch it back. So, the infrastructure that we would need to put in, it really depends on what the artist wants to do. But they're the creatives, and you saw, what Dua Lipa did with her sort of streaming offering that came out sort of back end of last year. Where there was, reportedly, millions of people purchased that streaming opportunity, but it was, she, created a bespoke, show that was designed and created and curated with, collaborators and, guest DJs and rework tracks specifically for the stream, and it will be, I think, the artists and creatives that really sort of push the envelope, and our role as the venues is to ensure that we give them the capability that they can then push it out to a wider audience. So I think hybrid does have a role to play, definitely, in the music sector.
What about you, Greg?
I think virtual and hybrid will go on for some period of time, partly because an international audience won't be able to attend for some time. Partly, I guess, because people will look and say that the carbon footprint can be taken down by doing this sort of thing. But I don't think people genuinely enjoy them very much. And I think people are desperate to get back. We've got an event that we've done for years for a fashion brand in, I think, September or October, which is now going to be a hybrid event for 50 people in Evolution, and then going out to around 1,000 people. And we're then sending out a food hamper and beverage hamper to each of the people, which, of course, gives us some opportunity for revenue. But I don't think that personally they work that well. We developed a virtual Christmas party last year to try and make sure that that we were trading. I think we did the best job that we could have done under the circumstances. I wouldn't want to do it again, though. So I don't think it'll disappear overnight. I think there still will be some this year and maybe for the next couple of years. But my hope is that, and my belief is that people will return to live events, that you get so much more from them.
Well, it would be great to finish. And Greg, I think just you talking about your experiences of running live events recently is my real big positive takeaway. But it'd be really good to hear from each of you something positive after this sort of tumultuous 16 months. Looking forward, what you're hoping for, Steve?
Well, I mean, I'm hoping for 2 or 3 years an incredible bounce back, you know. But the thing I'm, you know, as excited as I am to, you know, go to a football match or, you know, see that first gig at the O2, you know, when we're back up and running, I think, you know, I'm sort of optimistic about, you know, the fact that the pandemic has given, you know, a lot of people, myself included, my team, you know, the team at the O2, just time to kind of pause and reflect, you know. And there's been some pretty seismic things happening in the world, you know, and, you know, I'm sort of optimistic about how the event industry can, you know, build back in a more sustainable way, can build back in an even more creative way. You know, we're not out of this yet. You know, when, you know, whatever the world becomes, when it normalizes, it will look and feel a little bit different. But I'm optimistic it's going to be a better world, and, you know, the you know, the sector that we're in, the event sector, you know, is actually going to come back stronger than ever, because of, you know, the talent of the people in the industry and the commitment of the people in the industry, you know, and that's what I'm optimistic about.
Diane?
Well, I'm an optimist too, so you've managed to get 3 optimists on this panel. Well done. So, you know, I think there have been some real positives that have come out of the, you know, this time this extraordinary time that we've all gone through. I think we all know each other better, and I think, you know, even with our clients, sort of there's a different relationship when you're talking to someone that's in their living room, and you know, we've worked really, really hard. So I think actually we've now got better relationships with our key clients than we had before. And even within our teams, I think that's true. We've had to support each other through, you know, as I say, you know, everyone's probably had their ups and downs, and we've supported each other through that. And I think I would hope that actually we've hit the reset button here. And, you know, we all know that our industry has been very work hard, play hard, and you know, perhaps we can work differently. We can still work hard, but in a different way. And whether that is sort of, you know, hybrid working, where you're not having to commute in all the time and, you know, spend ridiculous amounts of time on a train, and just sort of perhaps yeah, that we can take the positives and adapt them into a world that could be better for everyone, to have that better work-life balance and better relationships with each other. I think a lot of people have rediscovered their family over this time. It's almost like kids didn't know who their parents were, and it, you know, actually discovered each other as individuals. So I think that's a positive that I would hope would carry forward.
Greg?
Well, I think it's been a, you know, real time for reflection. There's no doubt, and although you know, there's a lot of people that have been lost to the industry, not to go on a downer, Claire, it was a skill drain with people disappearing. The people that we employ, we've always been a family style of business, and I think it's absolutely drawn us closer. And I think it has also, as Diane said, brought our clients closer as well. We've all gone through this shared trauma, this shared experience. I think it'll improve our norms and values. I think we'll become nicer and softer people, you know, more able to understand each other's individual difficulties, because some people find this easier to come back to work than others. I do think the events industry will bounce back hugely. Can't wait to go to those concerts, Steve, to the live sporting events, to the Christmas parties. Can't wait to host Christmas parties. And people want them. There's no doubt. There's, you know, I don't think many find ways to spend corporate or private budget than going to events.
That is a wonderful note to finish on. Greg, Diane, Steve, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to talk to you and really inspiring to hear, and looking forward to being at all of your events in the very near future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheerio. Bye.